Hey guys, this is part 2 of my video. I know attention spans are short. I know time is scarce, so I thought I would just do 2 little videos that you can watch. So this is the second part, and I want to talk about implicit and explicit memory. I'm kind of going over the PowerPoint that Dr. Ginny has put into place, and I'm not going to go over the entire thing, but I'm just going to touch on some aspects that we're going to talk about. One is the implicit and explicit memory, and explicit memory is something that we can retrieve at will. For example, if someone asks you how do you spell cat, and you can say C-A-T because you can dip into your memory, pull it out, and put it back in again. Implicit memory is something that stays in your body, and you cannot retrieve it at will. Sometimes, for example, if someone says, hey, how do you tie your shoes? You might say, I don't really know, but I can show you, okay? Because your body will know what to do. So it's a memory that has not been processed. And most of the trauma is implicit. It stays in your body because the memories are too painful to be processed. To give you an example, if I was, say, 4 years old and someone pushed me in a pool, I didn't know how to swim, and I was terrified that I would drown, and then somebody pulled me out and put me on the side of the pool and saved me. I will remember that event in bits and pieces of sensory information, such as smell of chlorine, sounds of kids shrieking and playing in the water, the feeling of maybe being smothered, so these are some of the things that I would remember. But I wouldn't want to think about it a lot because it will bring back the same pain that I went through. It will bring back the fear that I went through. So in explicit memory that is processed through the hippocampus, you have a beginning, middle, and end. So you can narrate the whole story. For example, I can start saying, I was walking by the side of the pool, someone pushed me in, I fell in the pool, then someone pulled me out, and then I was okay. So if someone asks me what happened, I will be able to tell them. And I may be a little bit distressed, but I won't have a flashback. Now, if the memory, that means the memory is now explicit, quite literally I can fold this memory like a t-shirt or something and put it in my drawer and shut it. And when I need it, I will pull it out, retrieve it, be able to look at it and say, oh yeah, I remember that happened, and then put it away again. So it is now a rooted memory. That is explicit memory. It can be retrieved at will. Implicit memory is not rooted. It is free-floating. And I told you in the video earlier that we lose contact with language, and the explicit memory depends on language in order to store and retrieve a particular memory. So when we're traumatized, we're going through the event, we have disconnected from our speech and language centers, and we are only experiencing the sensory information. Okay? And then the memory is too painful, so it doesn't get processed, and it continues to float around and can come up at any time. So if I smell bleach, suddenly I will be back in the same spot. If I hear some kids shrieking a certain way, I will be back in the same spot. If I ever feel smothered by even a blanket, I will be back, to the same. So that is implicit memory, and that is how we typically remember trauma. So implicit memory bypasses language and operates unconsciously. Traumatic events are more easily recorded in the implicit memory system because the amygdala continues to function during the event. So we detach from the thinking brain, but this continues to function. And I wanted to make that, that very clear because a lot of our information that we're going to get in this week's reading is tied into this. And then here's state-dependent recall. So certain postures in your body will give rise to recalling of that event, and you might not even be aware of what happened. To give you an example, if you were given certain medications and one of the side effects of the medication is to raise your heart rate, and suddenly your heart starts racing because of the medication, your body is going to remember another point in time when your heart was racing like that, and you will again face some flashbacks, or you will recollect something and you will not know why you're feeling the way you're feeling. So that's implicit memory. And so people with PTSD suffer from flooding of images, sensations, impulses that are disconnected from the context and understanding by the explicit memory system. So you are not able to integrate all this information. And every time I say you, I mean a trauma survivor. I don't mean you, literally. So the trauma survivor is not able to integrate all this information. The trauma survivor is not able to say, oh, I was pushed in the pool. That's why this happened. Okay? And so every time they smell bleach, etc., they are going to be flooded by memories of that event. So this is important in terms of the goals of trauma therapy. One is that you bring the physiological symptoms into manageable limits. The person has authority over his or her memories and can elect to remember the trauma or put it aside. So now you have control. This is your story. You fold it and put it aside, and you can either retrieve it at will and examine it, or choose not to return to it. But that will happen only after you have processed it. The memory of the traumatic event is coherent, narrative linked with feeling. Okay? So some trauma survivors will tell you exactly what happened, but they do it with a blank face. They do it without naming the experience. Okay, so they will tell you very casually, yes, this is what happened, yes, that is what happened. So it's not just the telling of the story, by telling the story linked with the feelings. Okay. So that is also something I want you to pay attention to. And here, the person has constructed a coherent system of meaning that frames the story of trauma. There's some interesting work being done on this, and one of it is known as fictitious trauma, where the person does not necessarily have to write about what happened, but can write a fictional account of what happened. Art therapy is huge, where they can express the emotions that they were feeling without actually reliving what happened. A lot of times when we ask the clients to talk about their trauma, there is the danger that they will relive the trauma and re-experience everything they've been through. But all these new modalities that are coming in are kind of indirect ways of accessing your implicit memory without distressing the client further. Okay, so that is essentially what I wanted to bring to your attention, and I also want you to keep this in mind as you choose your techniques and choose how are you going to help this person reconnect to their rational brain. How are you going to calm down the amygdala and the reactivity? All right, thank you.